So let's begin from where it all begins. Unit creation. How does it go?
At first, we start with kind of looking at faction and weapon types and things like that. And we take a look at the battlefield and try to figure out what niches are available in the battlefield. And then we try to use that to inspire a mechanic on the battlefield. So we looked at the historical references, we used it to inspire us rather than limit ourselves.
The Romans, for example, we run through, in the tiers, we run through examples of actual units or functions within their army. So we run through like the Hastati to the Principes. We have like the Praetorians at in the late tiers. And they kind of represent the tent guards. And of course, there never really would have been like a whole unit of these guys, 100 of them dressed up and ready for war, but it's a really, really awesome concept. And these guys were like total badasses, right? So it's really cool to kind of take that idea and run with it a bit and turn it into something that makes it really exciting, kind of.
So inspired by, but not limited.
We go with what the people at the time would have felt was completely acceptable and normal, you know?
Yeah, you can see it in like the barbarian trees where they can just paint themselves with a slightly different color or pattern, and that'll completely change it, because they genuinely believe that painting racing stripes on themselves will make them go faster.
It works on cars.
We can do that.
So it should work on people. I'm sure it does.
So we go with what we think that people in that period would believe could happen.
So there are a lot of stats in this game. The user doesn't necessarily know what they all particularly do or what stats there are. Take us through a few, maybe, for these units. What are the important ones?
There's so many of them, and that was kind of one of the problems that we had. Was there's 22 roughly stats in the game that you have to understand in depth to have any idea of how a unit's actually going to behave on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did recently was statistical groupings, where stats are grouped together: melee defense and shield defense and charge deflect. Those kind of values would all come together in a single stat, so it's called defense. And then we've got aggression, and we've got survivability, and we've got mobility. That will make it a lot clearer, especially to newer players. So instead of walking into the game and saying, right, what does this unit do? Oh no, there's 22 numbers for me to memorize and understand.
Exactly.
You can just see a nice breakdown of it's aggressive and it's not very defensive and it's really mobile. I know what the unit's going to do.
The statistical groupings have also allowed us to have a really easy to understand comparison system in the metagame. So now when you mouse over a unit, it will always compare that unit to the unit that you currently have selected, which is something our players have really asked for.
So now I can hear it in the forums already. But now you're hiding information from us. It's made it easier, blah, blah, blah. The vets, how are you dealing with
because again,
people
so the statistical groupings are a way of making the information that's there manageable. It's not hiding anything at all. That information's still there. You can still click on it. You can still read deep into the stats.
And in fact, we have already exposed a lot more of the stats than we did in the past.
Absolutely.
So now you can actually look up what is my unit's speed or acceleration, turn speed. All of these are stats that previously were nowhere to be seen. Now you can see them.
We talk about statistical groupings. So in the tooltips in the game, you mouse over, for example, the road, and it says, this gives an advantage to light cavalry or light infantry. Where does that come in?
It's one of those interesting ones when it came to like light, medium, heavy. It was like a label for units, but it wasn't really determining things properly. It was kind of like hiding information, really.
So the labels heavy and light have got to disappear?
It's something we're moving away from, definitely. And when it comes to the ground types as well, we've been looking at so many different ways of working with this system. It was very complicated system. We had the issue, this was an issue in balancing as well, that we had barbarian units really sort of relied on forests, and then it got to the point where we were like, well, what if we have a desert? Are we going to stick a forest in the desert? It started to kind of get a little bit really, really restrictive. A unit should be able to perform on any map, right, given the right circumstance for it, and having it tied so closely to something like a ground type was really kind of making that difficult. So we've been looking at a lot of different ways of.
I think one key or important thing to remember is that even though we are moving away from those labels of light, medium, heavy, in terms of gameplay, absolutely nothing has changed in that sense. The units are no longer. It's not like we took something away from them. It's still
Absolutely
exactly
not.
the same.
No. That, again, like we said, all it does with bringing in the statistical groupings is just actually truthfully expose what's there and actually really expose kind of how it's all working. You know, that's the key.
Talking about unit diversity.
Right.
It's one thing giving them a spear or a bit faster and stuff like that. With the commanders, it was all about uniqueness through abilities. Is it the same with the units?
So with the units, their abilities kind of really emphasize what they can do and almost who they are, right? We have multiple different sword units in the game, but the abilities that they have are really gonna like say this is his signature, this is what they get up to. Again, formed combat, which is a really, really awesome ability, where they all sort of line up at the front row, start attacking, and then they rotate out over time so that the damage basically gets spread out through the unit, you know. And that kind of is a behavior that, as we were saying earlier, is something that we try and base in a historical route as well, and kind of like how would these guys have actually fought in the front line, you know.
We want to make sure that in each faction there's at least one kind of unique unit type that is like the signature unit type for that faction. And that even if unit types are similar, let's say swordsmen, which exist both in the barbarians and the Roman tree, that they still play differently.
Is it a rock, paper, scissors scenario where you've got your spearmen countering cavalry and you've got your swordsmen countering spearmen? Like, how does it all work?
So arena used to work kind of like that, where basically swords beat spears, spears beat cavalry, cavalry beats archers, archers beat swords. So we moved towards a more situational rock, paper, scissors, where each unit has a strength and a niche that it fills and another one where it fails. So for example, spearmen are fantastic at fighting you from the front, especially when they have phalanx active. But as soon as you so much as sneeze at the back of them, they just fall over dead. So if you try to fight a spearman, even if you're playing a swordsman who theoretically should beat a spearman back in that old rock, paper, scissors, if you fight him in the front, you're still going to lose. And the swordsman, their strength is to move around and flank. And as soon as you do that and fight on the swordsman's terms, he's going to win.
Well, the Greeks had the ability to drop shields and run at the enemy, right? Had is the key word. So what happened there? Why did that one? It didn't make.
There's a specific word for a Greek that dropped their shield. You can Google it, but it also it opens up so many edge cases and so many questions that were really, really difficult to kind of work around. Like, okay, so we've got this raise shields ability, but if you drop your shields and you can't get them back, then you can't ever raise shields again. You're kind of locked into this forever state of having dropped your shields. You know, there are things in the works to sort of look at alternatives to it. We're working on something for it.
You know, back in the old patches, we had drop shields, and we noticed either nobody used it because it wasn't good enough, or it was just slightly good enough and then everyone used it. There was never a choice. It was either, yeah, I'm just going to use it because it's amazing, or I'm not going to use that, it's not very good.
On that topic, archers, they have no ammo, right? Why don't they have a limited ammo?
We don't want to punish people for playing. As an archer, you should be shooting. That's a good thing, as long as you're not shooting your allies. But as long as you're shooting and you're shooting something, why should you be punished for that? Why should at some point we be like, you've been doing really well the entire game, now you need to stop playing? No, just stop. You didn't make a mistake, you didn't do anything wrong, you're just now, you don't get to play anymore. It's exactly the same with fatigue. Like, you have 3 units, and if they get tired,
there are plenty of weaknesses that a unit can have, and running out of ammo is one that again just leaves you having nothing to do. There are so many other weaknesses and strengths that we can create and exploit that are fun for everyone most of the time, or at least, you know, if you get charged, then very briefly upsetting, but it's over quickly, you know, like that kind of thing, rather than leaving you stuck and having nothing to do for 10 minutes.
And rather than like taking away unlimited ammo for archers, we'd rather just give tools to other units to deal with it.
Talking about fun mechanics, how is friendly fire fun? And also, how does it even work?
Yeah, so friendly fire does add layers of tactical depth. Like whether you're going to damage your allies or not changes how you approach a situation, how you approach a fight that's already happening, and that's really important. It adds a lot to arena, we feel. And we did try removing friendly fire entirely, and it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. Everyone would just right-click on the closest enemy unit they saw and not care. So what we did recognize was that friendly fire just wasn't communicated properly. Players didn't know when it's happening. So what we've done to try and address that is increase the level of UI. So now when you do friendly fire with a unit, you'll get a ping on your unit saying this unit just did friendly fire. There'll be a little icon on your unit cards which will say this unit is doing friendly fire. You'll get a big banner right across the top of your screen saying you are doing friendly fire, you need to deal with it. And then the damage dealt by friendly fire will also have a completely different color to damage dealt to enemies or dealt to your units. It'll be bright orange rather than red or blue.
You are definitely doing friendly fire here, and at that point there's no qualms over what's going on. You know, it's like friendly fire is happening, you need to stop it.
Yeah, it's give the tools to the players, let them, and as long as we tell them about it, then they can deal with it. They can make decisions based off that.
So that's it for units. I hope we managed to answer all of your major questions, and I'll see you on the battlefield.